The Radio Memories Network is brought to you in part by Liberated Syndication. Podcast publishing made easy. Libsyn.com. That's Libsyn.com.
Worried about the price of butter and eggs? Fed up with a housing shortage? Want to get away from it all?
CBS offers you Escape.
You are alone and unarmed in the green hell of a Caribbean jungle. You are being trailed by a pack of fiercely hungry dogs and a mad hunter armed for the kill. A mad hunter who believes that you, a human being, are the most dangerous game.
The Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present Escape, produced by William N. Robeson and directed tonight by Richard Sanville. Escape, carefully planned to free you from the four walls of today, free you for a half hour of high adventure.
Tonight, we escape to an island in the Caribbean and the weird sportsmanship of a madman, as Richard Congo tells it in his unforgettable story, The Most Dangerous Game.
My name is Rainsford. You may have heard of me. I make my living hunting big game for many of the major museums of the world, guiding parties of sportsmen on safari in Africa, Tibet, and South America. Perhaps you've had occasion to run across some of my books. But even if you have, there's one incident you won't find described in them. The full story of my most terrible hunt. It all began on board a private yacht en route to Rio. Whitney, my host, and I were smoking our pipes on deck, lounging back in steamer chairs, enjoying the sensuous drowsiness of the warm night.
Good dinner, eh?
Excellent. Afraid I ate too much, though.
Care for some gin rummy?
Oh, no, I don't care to move.
All right. There's a rather large island off there to the right somewhere. It's something of a mystery.
Really? Oh, I didn't know. What island is it?
The old charts call it Ship Trap Island. Suggestive name, isn't it? Sailors have a curious dread of the place. Some superstition.
I can't see it.
Well, you have good eyes, but even you can't see 4 miles or so through a moonless Caribbean night.
No, not even 4 yards. It is dark, isn't it?
It'll be light enough in Rio. Oh, by the way, hope the guns have come from Purdy's. We should have some good jaguar hunting up the Amazon. Great sport, hunting.
Best in the world.
Yes, for the hunter, not for the jaguar.
Oh, why not? They've no understanding.
Well, even so, I rather think they understand one thing. Fear. The fear of pain, the fear of death.
Huh? Oh, rot, Whitney. Who cares how the jaguar feels?
Perhaps the jaguar does.
Oh, you're a big game hunter, not a philosopher. Look, the world is made up of 2 classes. The hunter and the hunted. We're lucky enough to be the hunters. Do you think we've passed that island yet?
Yeah, can't tell in the dark. I hope so.
Why?
Oh, the place has a reputation. A bad one.
Cannibals?
Hardly. Even cannibals wouldn't live in such an isolated spot. But it's gotten into sailors' legends somehow. Did you notice? The crew seemed jumpy today.
Yes, they were a bit strange now that you mention it.
Yes, it's a sort of dread, a kind of mental chill. I'll be hanged if I haven't felt it myself.
Oh, pure imagination. Well, one superstitious sailor can infect a whole ship's company with his fear.
Maybe. Though sometimes sailors have an extra sense which tells them when they're in danger. Well, enough of that. I think I'll turn in.
I'm not sleepy. I'll just have another pipe.
Well, good night, then. See you in the morning.
Yes. Good night, Whitney. very dark. So dark I could have slept without closing my eyes. The night would have been my eyelids. I puffed at my pipe, got drowsy. Then I was wide awake. A gun out there in the water, a gun. I sprang to the rail, strained my eyes in the direction of those shots, but I couldn't see a thing. I leaped up on the rail to get better elevation, and my pipe, striking a rope, was knocked out of my mouth. I lunged for it, and tight fingers closed around my heart as I realized I'd reached too far and lost my balance. The blood-warm waters of the Caribbean closed over my head. When I came to the surface, the wash from the speeding yacht slapped salt water into my mouth, making me gag and strangling me. I coughed and spat it out and found my voice. Help! 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 The lights from the boat moved steadily away. They quickly became faint fireflies. And then they were blotted out by the night. I struggled out of my clothes and turned to the direction from which I'd heard those shots. I began swimming, slowly, conserving my strength. For an endless time, I fought the sea. Then I began to count my strokes. I thought I could possibly do another 100 before Someone was shooting game. Almost at my very elbow, it seemed. It gave me fresh vitality. I swam toward the sound. Then I was in the breakers. In another moment, I was dragging myself from the swirling waters, pulling myself hand over hand onto the narrow beach, gasping, panting for breath. I saw that the dense jungle came down to the edge of the cliff, and I was on land, on blessed land, safe on the soft, warm sand. I awoke late in the afternoon, a sharp hunger picking at me. As I slowly came to my feet, I saw, not far from where I'd been lying, signs of a terrible struggle in the underbrush that sloped so sharply to the beach. Some wounded thing, evidently a large animal, had thrashed about there in its death fight. And almost at my feet was a small glittering object, an empty cartridge from a .22. That was odd. The hunter had had his nerve to tackle a large brute with so small a gun. I examined the ground closely and found what I'd hoped for. The print of hunting boots. They pointed up toward a recess in the cliff, and I hurried quickly after them, for night was beginning to settle on the island. It was already dark when I came upon it. First, I thought it was a village. There were so many lights. But as I came closer, I saw that all the lights were in one building, a chateau on a high bluff. In a few moments, my bare feet were padding up stone steps, and I stood in front of the massive oaken door. Good evening. Oh, please don't be alarmed. There's no need for that gun. I'm no robber. It sounds silly, but I fell off a yacht. My name is Sanger Rainsford of New York City. He was certainly not alarmed by me, this giant who stood facing me. The revolver in his hand continued to point steadily at my chest, and the man behind it was solidly built and black-bearded to the waist, and silent. He waved me in with the gun, closed the door behind me. I was in a huge hall. There was no time to look around. Another man was coming down the broad marble stairs, an erect, slender man.
A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty Hi-Yo Silver, the Lone Ranger.
My name is Sanger Rainsford.
It is a great pleasure and honor to welcome Mr. Rainsford, the celebrated hunter, to my home.
Wow. Thank you.
I've read your book on hunting snow leopards in Tibet. I'm General Zahn.
This is the legend
Me,
of a
General.
man and a horse,
Very happy
and
to
how
see
they
you.
met.
All right, Ivan.
The
you
story
can
of
put
the
down
Lone
that gun.
Ranger
This
and his
gentleman
great
is
horse, Silver.
Ivan was an incredibly strong fellow, but he had been tortured by a mute.
The Lone Ranger and Tonto were trailing the worst outlaw in the
happy
West.
to see him.
His name was
Come, we
Butch
should not be
Cavendish.
chatting here. You
They had
want
followed
clothes,
his trail for
food,
many
rest.
weeks,
You
until
shall have
finally
them.
they
This
noticed
is the
that the
most
hoofprints of the
restful
outlaw's
spot.
horse were fresh.
I can't tell you how grateful I am.
Cavendish
My pleasure.
Yes, Tonto.
Follow
You
Ivan,
can't be
if you
far
please,
ahead.
Mr. Rainsford.
Come out,
I was
runners,
about to have
last
my
time.
dinner, but it can
Maybe
wait.
better we
I
shoot
think
in
my
sight.
clothes
No,
will fit you.
I want to take him alive. That shot. Look out. Steady there, steady, boy. Over there. Killer in ambush. Him
Followed
right
the
way.
man
Tonto, he missed
into
me,
a
but he shot my
huge
horse.
beam-ceiling
Get after him.
bedroom with a canopy bed large enough for 6 men.
Tonto's horse was tired and no
Ivan
match in
silently
speed for the
laid out
animal
an evening
Cavendish
suit.
rode. The
As
outlaw
I put it
escaped.
on, I noticed it
When
came
Tonto
from a London
returned from the
tailor.
futile chase, he found the Lone Ranger standing beside his
Called
dead
this
horse.
place too isolated even for cannibals.
faithful, and brave. But my next
I
horse
went
must be
downstairs
faster.
and sat down
I wish
opposite
that-
Zaroff in a dining room
Tonto,
that suggested a
We've heard
baronial
stories of a
fall of
wild
feudal
horse, a
time.
fiery white stallion.
The food was excellent.
Him seen near valley
Perhaps
over
you were
there, where
surprised that I
Cavendish goes.
recognized your
We'll
name.
be on the lookout for the
But I
wild
read
horse while
all
we
books
follow
on travel,
Cavendish.
published in English, French, and Russian. I have but one passion in life, the hunt.
Why, I noticed you have some wonderful heads here. But that
Tonto's
Cape
horse
buffalo
carried
is
the Lone
larger than I've
Ranger's
ever
saddle,
seen.
his saddlebags and
Yes,
bridle,
he charged
while
me,
the masked
threw me
man and
against
the
the tree,
Indian
fractured
continued
my
on
skull.
foot along the
But I
outlaw's
got the
trail.
through.
When they reached
I've
the
always
top of
thought
the hill,
Cape buffalo was the most dangerous
they
of all
halted
big
suddenly
No,
and
the
stared
Cape
at an
buffalo is not the
awe-inspiring
most
sight
dangerous.
far down in the
No?
valley.
Here in my preserve on this island.
They saw a great white
I
stallion in a
hunt
death
more
fight with a giant buffalo.
What is it, big
The
game
horse
on
was
this island?
plunging, rearing,
Big-
charging, and dodging
Really?
wildly, and the sun
Oh, it is
flashed
not
from
here
his coat
natural.
as from a
I
coat
have
of
to stop
polished
there.
silver.
Well,
They
what
realized
have you
that this
imported?
was the legendary white
Tigers?
stallion, the one ranchers and
Hunting
hunters had
tigers
talked so
used
much
to
about.
interest me
Tonto,
when I
must have
exhausted
that
their
horse.
possibilities.
I'll try to shoot the
There is
buffalo.
no thrill left. in
far
tigers.
for
There's
pistol
no
shot.
I'll
real
get closer
danger.
before it's too late.
As he
I
ran
live-
downhill, the Lone Ranger watched the battle. The
Cigarette.
sleek white stallion was nimble and courageous, but his
We
strength
will have
began to
some
wane.
capital
The buffalo
hunting,
charged
you and I.
again and again.
what's
The splendid
gained?
muscles of the white horse
You'll
were
be
slower in
amused, I
responding,
know.
then too slow.
I think I
he
may
was
say
caught
in
by
all
the buffalo's
modesty
charge.
that I
Wet
have
crimson
done a
stained
rare
his pure
thing.
white coat. Another charge. The
invented
white horse
a
saw it coming,
new
and he couldn't dodge.
sensation.
He staggered and fell. The
May I
monster
pour
drew
you another
back and
glass?
lowered his head for the death charge. And then 2 shots
I've
rang
been a
out.
hunter all my life.
The buffalo
After many
shuddered from
years
the
of
impact of the
enjoyment,
masked man's
I found
bullets.
that the hunt
For
no
an
longer
instant, he stood
fascinated.
motionless.
It had
Then
ceased to be
fell.
what you call a sporting proposition. I always got my quarry. Always. And there is no greater bore than perfection.
Then you were a very good hunter, Jack.
No, I have merely discovered that the animal has nothing but his legs and his instincts. Instinct is no match for reason. When I
Truly
realized
battered
this,
and
it
bruised,
was
the
a
white
tragic
stallion
moment.
lay quietly
As
as
I
the Lone
told
Ranger
you,
bathed
I
his
loved to
wounds.
hunt.
During the next
And
several
then
days,
it
the
came
masked
to me
man and
as
the
an
Indian cared for the
inspiration
injured
what
horse.
I must do.
Then the wounds
that
were
was?
closed.
I had to
and the horse's
invent
strength
a
had
new
returned.
animal to
There was
hunt.
once more fire
A
in his
new
eye,
animal?
a spring in his step.
You're
His
joking.
head
I
was
assure
lifted
you I am
proudly.
not, sir. A new animal, and
Tonto,
so I
he's
found
himself
one.
again.
I bought this
Him
island, built
plenty
this house,
strong,
and
plenty
here I do
good
my
horse.
hunting.
I wonder if
The
you'll
island
take a
is
saddle.
perfect for my
Let's
purpose.
try.
There are jungles
Steady
with a
there,
maze of
steady
trails in
boy.
them, hills, bombs.
And the animal, General Zaroff?
Him run away.
It
No, Tonto, wait.
supplies me with
Let
the
him
most
go.
intense
I'd like to
excitement
have
of
that
all.
horse
I
more
never
than
grow
anything in the
bored
world.
now, for
But
I
he
have a
deserves his
quarry
freedom.
with
He
which
fought
I
for
can
it.
match my wits. An ideal quarry,
He's turned to
with
look at
courage,
us.
cunning,
See how
and
the
above
sun
all,
reflects from his white
reason.
coat.
Him
No
like
animal can
silver.
reason.
My dear
Silver.
fellow,
That
there
would
is
be a
one
name
who
for him.
can.
Silver!
I can't believe you're serious.
Silver! Hey, Silver!
Grisly joke.
Of course I'm serious. I'm
Tonto,
speaking of hunting.
coming
You're
back.
speaking of murder.
Just as if
Surely
you
your
knew what I
experiences
said.
in the
Did not
war...
make me condone cold-blooded murder.
Silver!
I'll wager you'll forget your notions
Silver,
when you go
you
hunting
beauty.
with me. Why, you've a
Time is
genuine
all
new
about.
thrill in store for you, Mr. Raines.
Thank you. I'm a hunter, not a murderer.
Halter, he
Oh, dear me,
trembled
that
as if from a
unfortunate
chill.
war began.
Every instinct
But
told him
I
that he
hunt
must
the
flee
scum
at
of
once
the
to
earth,
preserve his
sailors
freedom.
from tramp
And
ships,
yet he stood his
lascars,
ground.
mongrels
Where do you
from
get
the
them?
It wasn't gratitude that kept him there.
This island
It was something
called
stronger,
Shipcraft.
some mysterious
There is a
bond
row
of
of lights
friendship and
out there on the
understanding.
reef, which
He
indicate
heard the
the
man's
channel
voice,
where there is
and he
none.
liked it.
Only rock.
Silver.
I control the
Silver.
lights from my tower.
We're going to
You
be
wreck their
partners.
ships and then you shoot down the men.
I treat my visitors with every
You was
consideration.
Now, Tonto,
They get plenty
the
of good
Saddle.
food and
No
exercise,
horse like
they
that.
get into
Take
splendid
Saddle.
physical
Never was
condition.
a horse like this.
You shall see for
Now,
yourself
Silver,
tomorrow.
We're going to work
Would you like some
together.
more
The horse was
please?
wild
shall I
and
say
unused to the ways
We'll
of men,
visit
and the
my
weight of a
trainer.
saddle and a
We'll
rider.
to the cellar. I
But the
have
masked
about a
man was a
dozen
kind
there now.
teacher.
Safe.
He was gentle yet
Hearing a lot,
firm,
I
and
regret
Silver
to
was
say.
intelligent.
More accustomed to
The
the
stallion
deck than
seemed
the
to sense
jungle.
the desires of the
Ivan,
Lone
we'll have our
Ranger
coffee
and did
now.
his best to cooperate.
Thick
He learned
Turkish
quickly,
coffee, Mr.
and after
Rainsford,
several
very
days
good.
of training, he was ready.
Is your
Follow me,
appetite
Toto.
quite gone?
I'm
No
going
coffee,
after
thank
Cavendish.
Just one.
Come on, Silver!
It's a game. I suggest to one of them
No hoofs
that
had
we
ever
go
beat the
hunting.
plains like
I
those
give
thundering
him
hoofs
3
of the
hours
great horse
start. I am
Silver.
to follow, armed
During the
only
past
with
few
pistol
days,
of small
Cavendish had
caliber
gotten
and
far
range.
away, but the masked man and Tonto
Probably
trailed him
losing me for
relentlessly
3 whole
with only a
days.
minimum of rest.
He wins the
It
game.
took days to cut
I
down the
find him.
outlaw's lead, but at long last, Cavendish came into view.
There he is.
Fuses.
Come on, Silver!
No, I give him the option.
mighty
If
stallion
he won't
responded
hunt,
with a
I
new burst
turn
of
him over
speed.
to Ivan here. Ivan once served
Cavendish
as
fired
official
wild shots
executioner
over his
to the
shoulder
great white
until his
Tsar,
gun was
and
empty.
he has his
His
own
horse, though
ideas of
powerful and
sport.
fast, was no match for the
Invariably
charging
they choose
Silver.
the
Fear and panic filled the outlaw's face.
Today,
He heard the hoof beats ever nearer, and then the masked
I don't
man
wish you
shouted.
to
I
think
want
me a
you,
braggart.
Cavendish.
Once did almost win. Eventually, I had to use the
The masked man's avowed mission
Yes,
was accomplished.
Just step over here to
The last of the
window,
Cavendish
Amanda. I
gang
want
was
you to see
captured
my
to be
courtyard.
tried by law and punished for his crimes.
Go ahead, Mr. Rainford.
But there were
Open
many
the window.
others whose criminal plans were to be challenged by the Lone Ranger,
And I
his
have a
faithful
dozen, as
Indian
you can
companion
say.
Tonto, and his great
They are
horse
let out
Silver.
at 7 every night. If anyone should try to get into my house or out of it, well, it would be regrettable. And now I want to show you my new collection of heads. Will you come with me to the library, please?
I hope you'll excuse me tonight. I'm really not feeling at all well.
Oh, I am sorry. You need a good, restful night's sleep. Tomorrow you'll feel like a new man, and then we'll hunt. I wonder at the promising prospect.
But I was already hurrying from the room and up the marble stairway. I heard him calling after me.
Sorry you can't go with me tonight. I expect rather fair sport, a big, strong native from west coast of Africa. He looks resourceful.
The bed was good. I was tired, but I didn't sleep. I didn't toss or turn. I didn't move. I just lay rigidly in one spot, my eyes on the ceiling, my arms tight against my side, my breathing slow and heavy, my mind empty, waiting. The inky black was just beginning to dissolve. A thin line of gray was just beginning to seep insidiously into my room when Zaroff found his quarry. Then, I suppose I slept. When I awoke, the sun's shadows were already slanting through my room. Must have been well after noon. I came down to find General Zaroff pouring himself a glass of brandy by the sideboard.
Mr. Rainsford, feeling better, I trust?
Yes.
I wish I could say the same. No, I'm not well. Hunting was no good last night. He made a straight trail, offered no problems at all.
General, I want to leave the island at once.
Mr. Rainsford, tonight we will hunt. You and I.
No, General. I've told you I will not hunt.
I beg you to reconsider. My idea of sport is much more diverting than Ivan.
You mean that?
Yes. You and I. It's really an inspiration. A foeman worthy of my steel at last. Oh, you'll find this game worth playing, Rainsford. Your brain against mine. Your woodcraft against mine. Your strength and stamina against mine. Outdoor chess. And the stake is not without value, eh?
And if I win?
If I do not find you by midnight of the third day, then I'm defeated. My sloop will place you on the mainland near a town. Oh, you can trust me. I give you my word as a gentleman and as a sportsman. Of course, you in turn must agree to say nothing of your visit here.
I'll agree to say nothing of the kind.
Well, in that case, well, why discuss it now? 3 days from now, we can chat about it over a bottle of Veuve Clicquot. Unless... And now listen, Rainford. Ivan will supply you with hunting clothes, food, and knife. I suggest you wear moccasins. They leave a poorer trail. I suggest, too, you avoid the big swamp in the southeast corner of the island. There's quicksand there. And now you'll want to start, no doubt. I shall not follow until dusk. Hunting at night is so much more exciting than by day, don't you think, Mr. Rainsford? Good hunting.
kept telling myself through tight teeth that I had to keep my head. Keep my head. My first idea had been to put distance between myself and Zaroff, and so I'd plunged into the jungle in a blind panic. Before long, I shook it off and stopped. Straight flight was futile. It would only bring me out to the sea. Then I hit upon the idea of giving him a trail to follow. I would begin our dangerous game by playing the fox. For more than 2 hours, I went through the trackless wilderness, executing a series of intricate loops, doubling again and again on my trail. Night found me leg-weary, with hands and face lashed by the branches. I needed rest badly, and having played the fox, I decided now to play the cat. I climbed into the crotch of a huge tree. An apprehensive night crawled slowly by like a wounded snake. Then at dawning, a startled bird suddenly screamed, and I flattened against the bough. Through a screen of leaves as thick as tapestry, I saw the general. Came slowly, his eyes fixed on the ground. Almost beneath my tree, he paused and went down on one knee, studying the ground. I would have gone for him, leaping the way a panther does, except for the small automatic in his right hand. After a seemingly endless time, he came back to his feet. His eyes left the ground and traveled inch by inch up the tree. I froze, every muscle tensed for a spring. But the hunter's eyes stopped just before they reached the limb on which I lay. A slow smile spread over his brown face.
Oh, Rainsford, where can you have gone? Wherever are you, you clever dog? I simply must go home and lie down a bit to think this over.
The pent-up air burst hotly from my lungs as he turned back and disappeared. So, the general was playing with me, was saving me for another day's sport. Zaroff was the cat, and I was the mouse. In that moment, I knew the real meaning of terror. I slipped from the tree and set off into the woods. I'd only gone a few hundred yards when I found a huge dead tree leaning against a smaller living one. I pulled my knife from its sheath and set to work. When the job was finished, I threw myself down behind a log 100 feet away. How long I waited, I don't know. It seemed like days. It was probably only a few hours. Then he was coming again, with the sureness of a bloodhound. Nothing escaped those searching black eyes. No crushed blade of grass, no bent twig, no mark, however faint, in the moss. He was so intent on his stalking, he was upon the thing before he saw it, his foot touching the protruding branch that was the trigger. The dead tree, delicately adjusted to rest on the cut living one, crashed heavily to the earth. And I waited yet another moment, not daring to look up and see if it really had done its work.
Rainsford, if you're within the sound of my voice, let me congratulate you. There aren't many men who know how to make a Malay man-catcher. I am a lucky man, Rainsford. My reflexes are still good. Did you see me spring back even while it was falling? Rainsford, can you hear me? You are proving interesting. I'm going back now to have my wound dressed. Don't be alarmed. It's only a slight one. I shall be back. I shall be back.
It was dark, and I'd been going for hours. The vegetation became ranker. Insects were biting me savagely. And when mud began sucking viciously at my feet like giant leeches, I knew where I was. About to enter the death swamp with its quicksand. However, the softness of the earth gave me an idea. I stepped back about a dozen paces out of the quicksand and began to dig. When the pit was above my shoulders, I climbed out, and from some hard saplings I cut stakes, sharpening them to a fine point. I planted the stakes at the bottom of the pit, with their points up. With flying fingers, I wove a rough carpet of weeds and branches, and with it I covered the mouth of the pit. Then, wet with sweat and aching with tiredness, I crouched behind the stump of a lightning-blasted tree. I heard the padding sound of feet on the soft earth. I knew he was coming. The night wind brought me the perfume of the general's black cigarette. Although I could see nothing, it seemed to me that he was coming with unusual swiftness, that he was not feeling his way along foot by foot. In one brief moment, I lived an entire year. Then I heard the sharp crackle of breaking branches. The cover of the pit gave way.
You've done well, Rainsford. Very well. Where did you get the tie? Your Burmese tiger pit has claimed one of my best dogs. And so you score again. I must see what you can do now against my whole pack.
He went away again. But I just lay there in the swamp that night. At daybreak, I was awakened by a distant sound, faint and wavering. The baying of a pack of hounds. I went up into a tree. Down a watercourse, not a quarter of a mile away, I could see the bush moving. I strained my eyes and saw the lean figure of General Zaroff. Just ahead of him, I made out the gigantic Ivan, holding the pack in leash. I prepared for the native trick I've learned in Uganda. I slipped from the tree, caught hold of a springy young sapling, and to it fastened my knife, its blade pointing down the trail. With a bit of wild grapevine, I tied back the sapling and ran for my life. The hounds hit the fresh scent and raised their voices, and I knew how an animal at bay must feel. Even as I ran, the clamor of the hounds suddenly ceased. And with it, my heart stopped. For that meant they'd reached the knife. I climbed excitedly up a tree and looked back, and hope died in my brain. The general was still on his feet. Ivan, however, was not. The knife, driven by the recoil of the springing tree, had done its work. Then the dogs took up the cry again, and I was on the ground once more. Nerve, nerve. I panted the words over and over as I fled headlong. A blue gap showed through the trees dead ahead. I forced myself up on towards the gap and reached the sea. It lay 20 feet below me, rumbling and hissing. I stood a moment, poised over the edge. I heard the hounds. I knew it was the end. Then I leaped far out into the water.
Well, it's been a busy day, Adam. A busy day. Oh, down, Adam, down. What's the matter, my boy? Hungry? All right, catch. It's quite a day. Not perfect, of course. 2 slight annoyances. One is it will be difficult to replace Ivan. And the other, well, our quarry escaped us, didn't he, Adam? But then, of course, the American didn't really play the game. So we won't count it. We won't count it at all. All right, my boy. That's enough for now. Out you go with the rest. Better luck another time.
Rainsford.
Good evening, General.
How did you get here?
I swam. I found that quicker than walking through the jungle.
I congratulate you. You have won the game.
No, General.
Yes. Yes, of course you have.
I'm still a beast at bay. Get ready, General Zaroff.
I see. Splendid. One of us is to furnish a meal for the hounds. The other will sleep in this very excellent bed. Good, Rainsford. Good. Angar.
The general was right. Never before in my life had I slept in a better bed.
Escape is produced by William N. Robeson and was directed tonight by Richard Sanville. You have escaped tonight in the Richard Connell story, The Most Dangerous Game, adapted for radio by Irving Ravitch, with Paul Frees as Sango Rainsford and Hans Conried as General Zaroff. The special musical score was conceived and conducted by Cy Feuer. Next week,
you're sitting at the throttle of a speeding locomotive, screaming around the curves of a mountain gorge, racing against time with death at your shoulder. Next week, you're the engineer of the Yellow Mail.
Next week, CBS offers you Escape with Frank H. Spearman's exciting story of railroading the run of the Yellow Mail. Until this same time next week, then, good night. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.